On today's episode of the Glue Guys, Glue Guys Theater Part 2.
Wow.
The sequel of the Daryl Morey, Sean Marks Call. We will do that here live on the show to record. We're going to do hey, how was your weekend mulling over the Harden trade? We'll kind of...
Interesting.
How does that taste in your mouth? How's that aftertaste? There's an important vaccine update that we have to talk about that relates to Kyrie Irving.
Gotta do it.
And then Rich Hoffman, the fantastic Sixers reporter for The Athletic, is going to join me for 20 good minutes. I just want to learn from Rich, who was Ben Simmons?
Yeah,
I don't
this Ben Simmons
remember.
Guy? Let's rediscover him.
Welcome back to the Glue Guys. This is Mike Arcelo, Brian.
Hello.
Check us out on Twitter at BK Glue Guys, Netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself behind the paywall at theathletic.com/glue guys. Subsidiary of the New York Times, Brian.
Michael.
The Nets are back.
Yeah.
Kind of. Nick Claxton. So we're recording this on Monday. This is ahead of the Kings game. It looks like Seth Curry and Andre Drummond will make their debuts for the Brooklyn Nets. We are not talking about that on this show, though we will have a pod soon after in the following days to talk about that. Nick Claxton maybe returning. LaMarcus Aldridge maybe returning. Brian, I think that is an official. The Nets are back.
The Nets are back.
Well, we have it queued up. You
Almost.
gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Whenever KD, Ben Simmons, and Joe Harris all play, it's going to be the loudest Nets are back in the history of the world.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for that on so many levels, Mike. How are you? How's everything? You had the weekend to think about it. You ruminated.
Been great.
You've been pondering deep thoughts, I can tell.
I don't know if anyone has had this experience. So trade deadline is one of the great times on the sports calendar. Obviously now it comes right up to the Super Bowl. It comes at a perfect time because the Super Bowl layoff, it's the 2 weeks. There's only so much you can talk about Joe Burrow and Aaron Donald and people like that leading up to the game.
When people talk about Joe Burrow, what kind of things do they say, just out of curiosity?
Just like how cool he is. Just like a cool
You know
guy.
what's insane, Mike? I literally met Joe Burrow for the first time yesterday. I just don't watch football. I just don't.
When you say you met, like you saw him on the TV screen.
I learned his name and saw his face for the first time. That's where I am.
That's you're one of those people who tune into the Super Bowl for the culture of it all.
I like
50 Cent of it all.
To stay abreast of the culture. Yeah, of course.
So the trade deadline's a perfect time, and I just consume as many podcasts as I can post trade deadline. I want to hear what everyone has to say. Mo DeKeel, friend of the show, has been on about 10 podcasts since he's been on the Athletic NBA Show's live show, and there's a bunch of other places. Mo absolutely loves this trade for the Nets from a basketball fit.
Yeah.
And he's a microcosm of, I think, the general sentiment now, which is like, I can't believe that the Nets pulled off a Harden trade where they lose James Harden, but yet the consensus is that the Nets won the trade, if we can say that they won the trade right now. Well, do you follow that consensus? Brian?
It's interesting. It's really hard because it requires a whole lot of buy-in to this most recent iteration of James Harden being the future iteration of James Harden, or at least this is the beginning of. Let's just call it what it's being sold as is the beginning of the end of the James Harden MVP caliber primacy. You know, he's great. Sure. He's not like who's it? Was it Seth Partnow who does the ranking of all the best players in the NBA? They had him
tiers them. They're not a ranking, Brian.
Right.
They're
A tier, and it's a very good tier system, and I respect his work enormously. And I think he had Harden as 1B this year, going into the season. And I think it's hard to make that argument going into next season. I think that's going to be a tough. I think he's fallen.
I'm actually going to pull it up as Seth Partnow.
I want to get that right because I also I'm pretty sure he had Kevin Durant as 1A alone with or not alone with one other guy, Giannis.
This is August 13th. Looks like the most updated version. Here's who's so he has tier 1A and then 1B. Mm-hmm. Giannis, Durant, LeBron 1A, okay. 1B, Harden, Kawhi. Obvious caveat there. Jokic and Curry. Yeah. And actually, I don't know if Curry's technically 1B this season either. Like he hasn't. I mean, the Warriors have been great, but he hasn't himself been all that fantastic. Yeah. And just to give you an example of who is the 2 tier, as I furiously scroll down because it's one of the longest articles The Athletic publishes. Anthony Davis 2A, Embiid 2A, Jokic or Doncic 2A. So that's the 2A, and then Lillard, Butler, Paul George, and Rudy Gobert are 2B. So like, frankly, James Harden may not even be 2A.
Right.
He's a 2B, 2C. God forbid 3A, because 3A is Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, Trae Young, Zion. Which, anyway, sorry.
So, anyways,
great story. Everyone should read it.
It's a big recommend every year. Get behind that paywall while you're at it. But so, anyways, like there is just to try to answer your question from earlier. I'm a fence sitter. I'm annoying in that way. You know, I always try to stay very neutral. Like Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln was known for delaying decisions for a long time until for political purposes. And this is where I am with
it. Must happen now.
Yeah, until
it must happen. Sorry, that's all I remember from the movie.
Tammany Hall hucksters.
I remember a story. There once was a shoe shiner.
These are great. That sounded like Lane Price from Mad Men. What I'm saying is like I don't know how to fall strongly on either side of this yet, because like what we saw this season was not good, and if we are getting this version of James Harden in perpetuity, then we maybe got pretty clearly the better half of the deal. Well, like just the better half of that, we got the better player potentially out of the whole deal. If he was holding out on us, which is super possible, and he just comes on and he's back to dropping 40, 15, and 10 on a nightly basis, then that's not true. So I gotta see what kind of recharge he gets from being on the Sixers. But as of right now, I maintain the right to sit on the fence. People talk a lot of S about fence sitting, but I'm going to post up on this right in the middle of this. I'm going to straddle this fence as hard as I possibly can until it's time.
So as we're recording this, it's 2:13 p.m. There's a good chance that Steve Nash's pregame availability will happen while we're recording or will happen just after we record. And we're waiting on news from Ben Simmons. Alex Sturm, massive friend of the show, tweeted out that Ben Simmons is listed on Brooklyn's most recent injury report as, quote, return to competition reconditioning. And he used to be called not with team. So he is with team. If you follow social media, his fiance, I think Ben Simmons' fiance, has received a care package of Nets gear.
Okay.
So they're geared up.
Return to competition is an interesting turn of phrase there for that.
Return to competition, reconditioning. They're going to
clock the
his ass.
Yeah.
Just as a quick tiering thing to go back to the Seth Partnow tiers.
Okay.
So the James Harden's a 1B. Just for frame of reference, Ben Simmons is a 3C.
Yeah.
In this tier. Here's who's in that tier. Just for like, if we're trying to do an episode of where we remember who Ben Simmons is, Draymond is 3C, Jaylen Brown, Pascal Siakam, Russell Westbrook, and Zach LaVine. That is a wide, obviously there's a wide variance between all those.
Different players there. Interesting.
But this is why this came out, a month before the season even began. So there's I mean, if Seth did it now, I'll text Seth, name drop, not a big deal, and I'll ask him where he would put Ben Simmons and James Harden, just roughly. He puts a lot of thought.
Let's get that in there.
Yeah. But I agree with you that like it's fair to fence sit, right? It's hard to post deadline. You have to have an opinion, you have to have a take. Also, this is something that's been rumored for at least a month, if not longer. Ben Simmons to the Nets has been rumored since Kyrie Irving didn't get the vaccine, right? Like there was rumors of, is Kyrie going to be traded to Philly? Ben Simmons, blah, blah, blah. One problem for another. Now it's James Harden's problem for Ben Simmons. I don't know. The more you just let it soak over you, Ben Simmons, from reporting, I think Ramona Shelburne is one who has the definitive story right now on the behind the scenes of the Simmons-Harden trade, which we will get to in Glue Guys Theater. Ben Simmons seems very appreciative to be a Brooklyn Net. I would imagine he is. His mental health was at stake. I'm not even joking. His mental health is at stake by being in Philadelphia. Now, if I'm a 76ers fan, I guess if I'm a Sixers fan, I don't fully understand why people are like, this is a bad trade for Philly, because ultimately they were getting a player who's going to play basketball potentially. Even though, have you heard that James Harden, so he's going to sit out until All-Star break, until after All-Star break because of his hamstring issue.
Okay.
Do you think conspiracy theory?
Sure.
Is that just simply James Harden being a Daryl Morey like, hey, Daryl,
Optics.
this isn't glue guys of the year, but
Yeah.
like I tanked the final few weeks of my time with the Nets.
Yeah.
We have to act like my injury is actually big. Because I'll say this, if he has an actual hamstring injury, if this is a reoccurrence of the most devastating hamstring in the history of hamstrings, then the Nets fleeced Daryl Morey and the 76ers, gave him some damaged goods.
True.
But I'm sure it's optics.
We know he's not above playing optics, Mike, from the various reports from around the deadline.
No, didn't that help you emotionally understand this trade? Like it made me feel better about James Harden being sent away from the Brooklyn Nets because Harden's a master of optics.
Yeah.
He fully took a dump all over the Nets
It's
as he was
really
leaving the
interesting
building.
to think, like, in hindsight, too, like, when was the exact moment? Because I feel like the switch flipped. Like, all of a sudden, we started just hearing the reports, and that was it. I'm just trying to think about, like, what was the moment when it all
Are
went
you
wrong?
playing coy?
Why?
Is it when Kyrie returned from basketball? Everyone seems to point to the Kyrie Irving coming back to play is actually the time when Harden started to that and Katie's injury are the two.
I wasn't playing coy. It seems like I
moments.
was. I was just it's just sort of being clueless. But it does. I mean, yeah. It seems like a strong correlation, Mike. I don't know.
See, and there's the report from Joe Varden that when Kyrie was burning sage before one game, that Harden looked at him with three heads.
But he had done the sage burning beforehand. Like surely James Harden is aware of the sage burning memes as part of the Kyrie deal. His brand.
Well, here's kind of my actual theory about James Harden, and this goes in part of why he didn't have the vision forward that, hey, Kevin Durant's going to be playing basketball in a few weeks for this team. You should just maybe you shouldn't freak out and want to leave for Philly. Is I think he's actually kind of a racehorse with blinders on, right? So the data point I go back to is when we were going to the bubble. Do you remember what mask James Harden was wearing while he was flying into the bubble?
I don't
It was a
remember.
Blue Lives Matter.
Oh, right, yeah.
It was if everyone remembers,
Yeah.
it was basically like a black and gray American flag mask that it did look like something from Call of Duty, but it really meant something like Blue Lives Matter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And at that time, this was right around George Floyd, and there was a lot of emotion during that time, or was it George Floyd or Jacob Blake but so obviously there's a lot of emotion. That's also why Kyrie was like, "Hey, everyone, we shouldn't play basketball right now." Right? There's a lot of emotion during that time. I just think, and James Harden was like, "Oh, I didn't know this was this mask. I didn't know it. I thought it looked cool." That was what he was like. I thought it looked cool. I kind of think Harden has just he's a tunnel vision.
Yeah.
It goes basketball court, strip club,
Little food.
little food,
Again,
food court,
I feel
basketball court, food court, strip court.
Are you familiar with the Ayurvedic doshas,
Night court.
Mike? Do you?
What's that?
We've talked about the doshas. I took a dosha test, the Ayurvedic, and I have a
Remind me.
I have a persistent cough, or basically my entire life.
Oh, you do?
I have a
For someone who's edited your audio for 8
I'm a
years?
person who clears his throat a lot more often than a podcast editor would like. And as part of my Ayurvedic doshic test, I got this thing, it's called Kapha. A Kapha bot. It felt very accurate for me. I was like, wow, this is the most accurate I've ever had anything tell me about and it was like, you probably have a lot of mucus. You probably clear your throat a lot. And I was like, wow, I feel incredibly seen. And
Is there a Kafka community?
one Kapha to another. I'm saying James Harden feels very Kapha to me. And I could relate to, I'm telling you he's a Kapha. I mean, with very similar body types, very similar. And the blinder element is, after midnight, you can catch me with blinders on, sneaking around in the snack cabinet, real heavy. That's where Kaphas
that
go.
part of the-
That's a
Yeah?
Kapha thing. It's big Kapha energy, is to be late at night starving because you want to fall asleep, and the fastest way to fall
How do you
asleep,
spell Kaffa?
Kapha. Kapha. Like it's a PH for the F, one of those,
Yeah.
one of those type.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll get.
It's a combination of water and earth elements.
Don't get hung up on that part of it. Just go
Is
right
that
to the body. Go right to the body
What
type.
is this, Captain Planet? What the hell?
It's a little Captain Planet. It's a little Captain
Sweet
Planet.
though. Hey,
yeah.
no, I'm not gonna lie.
I just
go
love
for
anything
religion
that
that's a
tells
little
me
Captain
like
Planet.
narcissistically about myself. I'm pretty. You can catch me reading an astrology chart real quick.
Ooh, I love this. So this is about the three bodily humors. Vada, which is space and air. Pitta, Dennis Pitta, tight end for the Ravens. Shout out. Mina Kimes, fire and water. And Kapha, water and earth.
Yeah.
So these are the different types of energy and different types of bodies.
Kaphas are like slow and oily. That's sort of the big. That's sort of the big.
Here's the. This is from the Somatherum Health Resort.
It's a prestigious resort.
You've studied. You've lectured there.
I've given them thousands of dollars. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't know these people.
This is a heavy, robust physical build, well proportioned, puts on weight quickly, often overweight, smooth skin. Wow, this is. I'm a. I may be. I got great skin. Actually,
you have a good skin.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Few wrinkles, strong hair. Love a strong hair, deep, pleasant voice. Look at this. I love this. What is this bullshit?
Yeah.
I love this. It's like you're fat, and then they're like, but you have great hair. You have a good voice.
Yeah. Trade off. Yeah.
I've met some fat people who don't have hair too, but I love this. I'm going to dive deeper into the Kapha.
Sorry, I didn't want to get us too hung up, but this is. I was just saying the blinders. Late night eating is a Kapha specialty, which I can relate to.
No, I just to link it back to the Nets. I just think I think his blinders on, and he's like, "What's my situation? How am I feeling?" My wife is a life coach, and these lessons that she took.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, she just became it very, very recently.
Oh, your wife? I thought you were talking about James Harden's wife. I was like, first of all, I didn't think he was married. Second of all,
what if he was just like a pleasant homemaker? She's just waiting for him to come home.
I'm just trying to follow along here. Keep going.
She's like, who's the wife in Goodfellas? Who's Ray Liotta's? Who's the character? What's her name? Karen.
Karen. Yeah.
Karen. Yeah. That's what I was in my head. I was like, how does Ray Liotta yell at her? James Harden's wife is just waiting for Harden to come home. And then he comes home bleary-eyed, and he starts laughing at her as she's throwing stuff at him. To link this back to the Nets, Harden, what's my situation? His situation while he was with the Nets at the end here was ugly. I mean, the team has lost 11 in a row. Is it? It's pretty ugly.
At least 10. Oh, God, I think it was 10.
I think it's 11.
Is it? The
Miami
I
saw
game
someone
was
write
11.
Yeah,
all right.
But it may be 10. So now he goes to Philly thinking this is going to be an amazing situation. I just want to warn Philly fans, and I'll talk to Rich Hoffman about this. Not that he's a Philly fan, but it's he's gonna try to take the franchise away from Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid's not gonna love it. Like, we're all assuming that Joel Embiid's so desperate to win that he's willing to hand over ball control, hand over like bits of dominating the franchise like he has. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons didn't fit together because they couldn't coexist on the floor. Harden's a drastically different player than Ben Simmons, but I really think I think they're gonna last maybe a season and a half, and then Daryl Morey's gonna have to decide: do I trade James Harden on this awful contract, or do I have to trade Joel Embiid? And Joel Embiid will go to the Knicks, and then he'll probably tear his ankle 1,000 times, and that's just how it works with the Knicks.
Of course.
This is the perfect time, Brian.
Oh.
To bring out one of our favorite segments
get into character
here that we've just started. So Brian was a visual performing arts major at Syracuse. I was a broadcast digital journalism major. With our powers combined, we have Glue Guys Theater. As always, Brian will play the role of the bearded, the villainous Daryl Morey. And I will play the bright-eyed optimist, the big New Zealander, Sean Marks. This scene is the final scene in their relationship before the trade deadline. This is the moment that was partially written out in Ramona Shelburne's ESPN story where Daryl Morey refused to have Sean Marks get off the phone. Daryl Morey demanded that they finish the trade between James Harden and Ben Simmons. This now is Glue Guys Theater. Interior. Brooklyn Nets training facility. Sunset Park, Brooklyn. It's 1:15 p.m. on trade deadline day. A phone rings. A lanky-armed New Zealander named Sean Marks picks up. Hello? Daryl, I can hear you breathing on the other end.
My bad, Sean. I was just, just texting an old friend of mine.
You son of a bitch.
You're trapped, Sean. I have you cornered.
You think you've got leverage on me just because you're good at DMing reporters? Ha! I have your precious James Harden, and you've got a 6'10" pissed-off Aussie who refuses to play with you.
Listen to me. Listen, it's over, Sean. James is never coming back to you, and it's time to move on and accept your fate.
I don't need this. I've got some Eastern European big men I've got to scout. I'll talk to you later.
You stay on the fucking phone, Sean. We're gonna finish this.
We're dropping me F-bombs now, Daryl.
Yeah, I'll drop some fucking F-bombs, A-bombs, any kind of alphabetically linked armaments. It's time to get this shit done, Sean. Sean, remember the bubble. All the good conversations we had together. You remember those days, Sean? I'd like to get back to that time.
Me too, Daryl. But those days are dead. We're dead, us, you, and I. But I'm tired of the hamstrung Harden ruining my team. Let's make a deal.
Yeah! So I added that. That's his big summer.
Wait, what was Emperor Palpatine?
Yeah.
In the,
I don't know. What's the line?
Emperor Palpatine. Oh, I'll just look it up. But that is the end of Glue Guys Theater.
Wow. I really tried to channel the incel energy that I think.
I loved your sweaty. It's very Tony Soprano meets Hans Gruber.
Yeah, he's legendarily, apparently Maury is a legendary swearer and sweater in the war room, per some of the reporting.
How do you feel about that? That was like, okay. So how does that get in the story? Daryl Morey's telling Ramona Shelburne, and he's like, I mean, I told Sean, I said, don't you get off the fucking phone. And he said back to me, oh, we're dropping F-bombs now. Like, what a lame-o. What a lame-o, Daryl.
How does it get back to them? Is that Sean telling? Who's somebody's got to, who is it?
It's Daryl Morey talking to Ramona. It has to be people. Like, the only way you have direct quotes is if,
well, of course,
the people on the phone call, heard it. Maybe Rich Paul was on the line
so
and just listening in, and then
have these direct quotes.
How do you feel? So, if for the YouTube audience, Brian has the photo of James Harden coming off the private jet, hugging Daryl Morey on the tarmac.
I just hate to say, but if Daryl Morey called up Ramona, or if there was the quote, and he's like, and guess what? I dropped the F-bomb on this call. Like, you put this in there, Ramona. You're gonna, like, how badass is that? Like, all right, Daryl, we did it. Yeah, I have Daryl Morey as the background. He's hugging Harden, and look at how at peace he looks. My God, look at that.
Dude, I think this is the beginning of the end of the 76ers. Now, I was listening to Basket Buds on the Athletic NBA show, and Zach Harper was talking about this, and I do agree with this. When we were saying, like, a championship window, there's an obsession of thinking a championship window has to be like 5-6 seasons, right? Like, it has to be this sort of dynastic run that is possible. Mm-hmm. When really, it's really hard to have a Chicago Bulls-like existence. I mean, it's pretty much impossible. Particularly in the current day NBA, but even then. Mm-hmm. And so for Philly, of course I understand why they did the trade. Ben Simmons wasn't going to play for them, and James Harden will play basketball for them, and he's happy to take their money. He's already opted into his deal. He's going to get the full max that's going to pay him $60 million by the time he's 37 years old. To be honest, if I had to rank my relief meter, the things that provide me the most relief, it is that the Nets are not – that's like number 2. That the Nets do not have to pay that much money to James Harden, because this isn't like, he's not going to age gracefully. Now, you talked about this, about sitting on the fence and waiting and seeing. Harden's going to look great when he first starts playing with the team, if his hamstring allows him to.
Right.
His hand strain and hamstring if they both allow him to look good, but like, remember how energetic he was when he came to the Nets the first time, or came to the Nets initially?
He looked good. He looked really good at the beginning.
He was sacrificing,
Optics,
moving the ball,
just a real strategist. PR man through and through.
And I think he's gonna look like that, like this half season. But next season, it's gonna get ugly and mucky and disgusting, and I'm gonna be loving it. And if anything, this is good for the drama. Talking about Glue Guys Theater, the Nets kind of needed a villain, or at least a counterpoint, because the Bucks didn't really feel like it fully.
I was gonna say, how many villains would we have on one team already? But I was about other villains.
The Nets don't. Yeah, the Nets domestic don't need to roster more villains.
The villains abroad. Yes.
Don't you think that there's some point of the Bucks weren't really scaring them? Like Miami was, not that they didn't scare them, but the Bucks just sort of feel like their own separate entity at this point. They won their championship. It's kind of hard to hate Giannis, even though he crippled Kyrie Irving.
I fully hate him. I don't care. That's easy for me.
And Miami still, there's no real rivalry there. The Knicks are terrible, so there's no rivalry there. Boston, sure, but it's a different Boston team than the one that fleeced. It's a totally different regime.
Different places in life.
Yeah. But Philly and the Nets, I mean, it is a chance to be some of the best if they play in the playoffs. Oh my Lord.
And if Kyrie's not playing home games while that's happening.
Great segue, Brian.
Yeah.
Great segue. Quick update before we get to Rich Hoffman.
Okay.
Washington, D.C., the city I live right outside. Washington, D.C., one of the most liberal places in America, has dropped their vaccine mandate.
Okay.
For inside places like gyms and restaurants and blah, 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 blah. That is a significant step. Now, Washington, D.C., Maryland are two of the best states right now in terms of vaccination and COVID. Maryland, I think, is number one in terms of cases per 100,000 people across the country, or in terms of least percentage dropping and all that stuff. So this is the area where it's going to kind of happen first. But we've already seen changes in Boston, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York overall as a state, though not New York City. Now Washington, D.C., another northeastern, metropolitan area. I haven't checked on what Philly's got going on, but now that James Harden's there, that they're not going to have a vaccine mandate, right? Again, we don't have information. We're waiting on Eric Adams, the great mayor that he is.
You're working You're working the DMs, Mike. I see you out there. You're scooping.
I was texting some Albany insiders. My Albany insiders this weekend.
Heavily.
They're very confused why I'm asking them about vaccine mandates in New York City. But
shut up. I'll ask the questions.
Yeah. This is me. I need this information.
Yeah.
And I will name you. I will dox you. I'll tell people what you told me.
Don't say it. Did they listen to the show?
Yeah, they do listen to the show. I'm just kidding. I won't do that. No, they don't. They absolutely do not. So it is kind of a big deal. Another major northeastern city is saying that had very strict vaccine rules. I can say that because I lived, I lived right outside the city. It's changing. So we'll see. I said this on the Saturday Slam Jam on the Athletic NBA show with Andrew Schlecht and Al Baby Cakes. But
I listened to that bit, Mike, that segment. You did nice.
Thanks,
man. You did a nice job.
Thank you.
I always listen to your bits and bobs.
Do you agree with me that the Nets, if all comes together, have the highest ceiling?
I still do, but I guess my question is, would it have been a higher ceiling? Is it a higher ceiling than an activated James Harden from the beginning of the season throughout? It's a lame argument because it's like, hindsight and you can't know. So for that reason, it sucks. But I think yes. I think still, despite everything, you got to give our current roster the nod. I mean, it's not like it's better. I mean, I don't think Philly even it's like, are we better than Milwaukee and so on and so forth? Like, I think Philly's marginally better. Well, yeah, I don't know. A lot better, I guess. They've made them quite a bit better. Hard to know.
Well, what's interesting, I don't think they really care that they lost Andre Drummond. There's going to be enough bigs out there in the buyout market that they're going to pretty quickly scoop up a Drummond replacement.
Yeah.
There's no replacing Seth Curry. And if you looked at their lineup that they were trotting out there without James Harden, they had while James Harden delayed his reporting to Philly so that the Nets couldn't get Seth Curry and Andre Drummond on time.
Yeah.
Which is what happened. Philly had their full lineup except for James Harden. Without Seth Curry, they are lacking some real shooting.
And also,
that's going to be a big problem with James Harden.
This goes back into like what James Harden are we getting? Because James Harden's shooting has sucked this season. I mean, I don't know what his percentages are. It just seems like it sucked. It feels sucky. So, but like again, he could just come back and be like, now I'm back to shooting insane step back threes over and over again, like I used to. It wouldn't surprise me either way.
Yeah, I mean, so their primary role players outside Embiid and Harden are Danny Green, who obviously still a solid 3-point shooter, but like that's basically all he can do at this point. Maxey, who is a decent 3-point shooter, basically 40% from the field. Maxey's really good. Everyone wanted him. He's not with his deal. Tobias Harris, who's average at best. And Tobias Harris is like no one gives a crap about. No one even brings up Tobias Harris.
Let's not talk about
at this
him.
point.
Well, yeah,
Thibault, terrible shooter. Shake Milton, not that good this year. Korkmaz, actually really bad this year from 3. Georges Niang, very good from 3. But they don't have that, like, the killer that Seth Curry was. Like, the guy who flying around screens. Obviously, him and Embiid had, like, so that's what's interesting to me is, of course, essentially what they did was they traded Drummond and Seth Curry for Harden. Of course you do that, right? Because Ben Simmons wasn't going to play basketball. But it weakens them on some level. And everyone talks about this. Ben Simmons, like if he is who he should be, which we're going to find out from Rich Hoffman, like he fits perfectly what the Nets need. He and Seth Curry being there, and we have no update on Joe Harris. But if Joe Harris returns, then you know the best benefit to Seth Curry is that it allows Patty Mills to sort of go back to that. Hey, I'm a bench player who's going to fire threes, and if I'm hot, I'm going to play with the starters. But I think the pressure was too much on Patty Mills to be like the second best scorer on this team for most of this past season as Kevin Durant's been out.
Yeah.
When like the best role for him is the guy that teams forget about, and then he hits threes.
What's the newest latest with Joe Harris? Like as part of like thinking about the utility of Seth Curry, it feels like there's a codependency there. But like, is he still being reevaluated? How many evaluations are we doing here?
I mean, I think someone tweeted out before the Miami game that they have not decided yet. The Nets haven't decided yet, or Joe Harris hasn't decided that he needs a second surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Harris said in Utah, so this was like before the trade deadline or whatever, right? That in my mind, I'm confident I'll be able to get back. I've been optimistic through this whole thing. I haven't really lost faith in the fact that I'm going to be able to come back and play, and that's the same spot I am in right now. I'm not just going to completely give in to what's going on. My focus is specific to the treatment. I just have to stay consistent, be a little bit more patient, have a little bit more time, and whatever happens, happens. It's kind of crazy to me that his ankle could be that bad after what they were trying to figure out, like what his initial diagnosis was and what we talked with before on this show to now. Like, how could it really be that horrible? Now, let me ask you this. So they have Seth Curry and Patty Mills. How big of a deal, though, is it if Joe Harris doesn't come back?
I mean, it feels like pretty good insurance, but yeah, I'm just thinking like roster construction, how fun it would be to just have that amount of shooting on this team, especially in a world in which, again, Kyrie Irving isn't playing playoff games at home. Not that it matters a ton. I mean, it's great insurance. But yeah, so I would say like would love to see it. Obviously, this helps out quite a bit to mitigate the issue there.
Yeah, to me, it's like, so we always focus on like the star rotation. Hey, can the Nets have, if Ben Simmons, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant are all playing and all full time, which we don't know if that will ever happen, you could have the rotation of KD and Simmons, KD and Kyrie and Ben Simmons, right? You can always have 2 of the 3 on the floor. I mean, the same could be said with role players, that if you have Joe Harris, then you always have Seth Curry and Joe Harris and Patty Mills and Seth Curry, right? Like you can always then have 2 elite shooters on the floor with 2 superstars. And then at that point, you're just throwing in LaMarcus Aldridge, Nick Claxton, James Johnson, depending on his health right now. So like we always, again, we focus on the stars. Well, the shooter rotation would be optimal. And Seth Curry saves them from ever having lineups where it's the Bruce Brown. Obviously, Bembry got cut.
Yeah, we never really talked about that. Do we? Do we do it for
Let's
now?
talk. I mean, so the decision was the Nets cut Bembry over Javon Carter and who else could have been up for the chopping block
Bruce
on
Brown.
that situation? Bruce Brown. How did you think that was the good? Bembry is the cheapest of them, but they had to pay out those guys anyways. Like Bembry's getting paid out in full, so it's not like it doesn't save them money to necessarily cut him.
Yeah,
What did you think?
Contracts aside, like Bembry was my favorite of those three. I think for everybody in Nets fandom that was probably true. So there's a level on some level I like that there's some fealty to the Bruce Brown experience, that we want to sort of see this through a little bit, if that's any of the logic behind doing it. But in terms of like the short term, hard to argue that Bembry didn't deserve that spot over those two other guys. Javon Carter is really just the beneficiary of the fact that we're just like in a weird spot with our point guards, and we're like kind of just need to have a third stringer on the roster right now. Like other than the reason like it's just positional and really require one, he's doesn't have a ton of utility.
Remind me to bring up Goran Dragic in a minute. Okay. But I think the reason why Javon Carter is still on the team, his deal runs into next season. He's getting paid about $4 million. So if you cut him, you're not only cutting him for this season, you're cutting him for next season as well. And even though no one in the world wants Javon Carter to be a Net anymore, $4 million salary is like kind of valuable to have in future trades this offseason. Like that's an easy guy to throw into any deal to increase, let's say you trade Joe Harris and Javon Carter. So that goes from you getting a guy with equal salary of $18.5 million to now a guy who's like $22, $23 million a year. There's a difference between that salary and the Javon Carter plus Joe Harris salary, right? So I think that's why he's here. Bruce Brown. Yeah, I think they just decided, okay, Bruce Brown, Bembry, who do we like more? At this point, I like Bembry more, but I agree with you. It's Bruce Brown is Bruce Brown. Like there's still something there. There's still value to be had. He actually had a good game in Miami. Goran Dragic, real quick before we get to interview with Rich Hoffman. Rich isn't going to be here at the time I told you, so we have a little bit more time. The report out from Woj, Goran Dragic has either been bought out or is going to be bought out, and basically every top contender in the NBA wants Dragic. The funny thing is Woj, for some reason, emphasized that the Bucks are really, really hard going to go after Goran Dragic. And because, I don't know, they had some injury or something. And Seth Partnow of The Athletic joked that, well, they can go after him hard. Every team is just going to offer him a minimum contract because that's all they can really offer him. Only under the cap teams can offer him more than the minimum. The Nets are obviously over the cap. Steve Nash did play with Goran Dragic in Phoenix. Maybe that helps us. You could say to Goran, the sales pitch could be, when you're playing at home, you will be the starting point guard of the Brooklyn Nets because Kyrie Irving won't be. Yeah. And those are the things that matter. Like, okay, why do buyout guys go where they go? Mm-hmm. They usually go because of playing time. Like the Nets got LaMarcus Aldridge because they guaranteed him playing time and a spot in the rotation. The Nets can guarantee, like, how many minutes do you think Goran Dragic would soak up? I think he would play like 20 minutes a game.
Because home games he's playing 36 at least,
and he's still valuable. I know he's 35 years old. He only played 5 games this year, so don't even look at his stats from this season. Last year he was 13 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, shooting like 43, 37.
Yeah. He's entering that perfect phase 83. Of life where he's got starter chops and a backup body. It's just aged out of the starter role.
And he's like also known as a great locker room guy, a real like emotional leader. He's 6'3". He's not like, obviously he's not like big, but he's not this, diminutive point guard who, if he's out there with Patty Mills, it would be like an embarrassing guard rotation. Like if he's playing starter, he's been a valuable player before in his career. He's not that far distance from that. He hasn't played for Toronto at all. It would be an amazing pickup, but there is going to be a lot of competition for him. And if the starting role matters, you say to him, dude, you're going to start. You're going to start in Brooklyn with Ben Simmons and Kevin Durant. All right. Any last thoughts before before you get your kaffa body out of here?
Oh, no, I got nothing.
Check us out on Twitter at BKGooGuys. Coming up, Rich Hoffman from The Athletic, Sixers reporter, talking about Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond, what they're going to bring to your Brooklyn Nets.
Love it.